Unaware his wife was the billionaire behind his parents' employer, he divorced her for a younger woman. She obliterated their lives and took their home. The morning he called her a burden and served her divorce papers, she quietly signed documents worth $847 million, buying the very company his parents worked for. He thought he was walking into freedom. He was walking straight into her empire. The rain came early that morning in Lagos, soft at first, then fierce enough to drum against the aluminum roof like a warning no one heard. Inside their modest two-bedroom apartment in Lekki Phase 1, Michael Harrison adjusted his tie before the mirror, his reflection sharp and self-assured. Behind him, on the faded couch near the window, Elena sat with a cup of lukewarm tea, eyes lowered, face unreadable. The steam rising from the cup blurred her features, a quiet woman, neat, humble, and seemingly ordinary. Michael cleared his throat. "I left some papers on the dining table. Read them when you have time." His tone was calm, almost polite, but the tension in his jaw betrayed him. Elena didn't look up. "Papers?" "Divorce papers," he said flatly. "It's better this way, Lena. We both know it." Outside, thunder rolled over the lagoon. For a moment she thought the sound might swallow the words, but they lingered like acid in her chest. He adjusted his wristwatch, expensive and new, one she hadn't bought. "You're not the woman I thought you were," he continued. "You have no ambition.
No spark.
I need someone who can grow with me." Someone richer, she thought, but said nothing. He mistook her silence for weakness. "Sophia understands what it means to move forward. Her father sees potential in me. There's a position waiting at Whitmore Capital once we're married."
Elena nodded slowly.
"So, that's what this is about." "It's about reality," he snapped. "You're content living on little freelance jobs. I can't keep carrying the financial load while you hide behind excuses." Her lips tightened. If only he knew that the same little freelance jobs he mocked were masks she built to protect her secret, that she was the founder of Nexus Systems, a global software giant she'd quietly sold 3 years earlier for 1.2 billion Nigerian naira in dollars worth, hidden under shell companies and trusts. She'd wanted to see if love could survive simplicity. It couldn't. When he left, slamming the door behind him, Elena sat in silence for a long time. The rain eased into drizzle. On the table, the envelope lay like a wound she didn't bother to touch. By noon, she was in her lawyer's office at Victoria Island. Barrister Chuka Morrison slid a thick stack of acquisition papers toward her. "Once you sign here and here, the transfer will be complete. You'll own Harrison and Sons Manufacturing outright." Her pen hovered. "And the current CEO?" "Robert Harrison, your father-in-law," Chuka said, hesitant. "His son, Michael, heads their sales unit." A thin smile curved her lips. "Then it's poetic, isn't it?" He studied her, uncertain. "You're sure about this?" Elena met his gaze, her eyes calm but glacial. "Completely. This is business, not revenge. Proceed." Outside the tinted glass windows, Lagos shimmered with its strange mix of chaos and ambition. Yellow buses honking, high-rises stretching towards storm-washed skies. Inside, Elena Martinez Harrison, once invisible, was taking back control of her narrative. 3 years earlier, before the experiment began, Elena had been the face of Nigeria's tech miracle, a young software engineer who turned supply chain algorithms into a billion-naira empire. But fame brought parasites. Friends became opportunists. Love became transactions. So she vanished. Sold her company quietly. Donated most of her luxury possessions. Bought second-hand clothes and rented a small flat under her maiden name. That was when she met Michael Harrison. He'd been different, or so she thought. He came from a hard-working family. His father had built Harrison and Sons from scratch, employing hundreds in Ogun State. Michael talked of honesty, of legacy, of love that didn't care for money. For once, she believed. But the longer they lived together, the clearer his hunger became. He complained when she refused to move to a bigger apartment. He mocked her thrift. He called her too simple. And when Sophia Whitmore, daughter of a powerful venture capitalist, showed interest, Michael's loyalty collapsed like a poorly built roof in rainy season. Now, as Elena signed the acquisition papers, she realized the test was over. She had her answer, and her plan. That evening, she returned to the flat to pack. The power was out, and only the soft light from her phone illuminated the living room. On the counter lay the divorce envelope beside a pen, perfectly placed. Michael's neat handwriting marked the note on top. "This isn't working. Don't make it difficult. Sophia understands the life I deserve." Elena read it twice. Her fingers didn't tremble. Then she placed her signature on the dotted line and whispered, "You're free." Her phone buzzed, an encrypted message from Chuka. "Transfer successful. Harrison and Sons officially under Nexus Capital."
Congratulations, ma'am.
For the first time in years, she smiled. By the next morning, her transformation began. The wig she'd worn to dull her presence came off. The worn-out jeans and thrift cardigan went into a donation box. From her vault, she retrieved the navy blue suit tailored in Milan and a simple gold wristwatch that once belonged to her mother. When she looked in the mirror, the woman staring back wasn't the timid wife Michael had pitied. It was Elena Martinez, the billionaire he'd underestimated. 3 weeks later, the quarterly meeting at Harrison and Sons was scheduled. Robert Harrison sat at the head of the boardroom table, gray-haired, weary. Beside him, Michael scrolled through his phone, oblivious. The staff whispered rumors of a mysterious buyer who'd saved the company from bankruptcy. No one knew the name. At precisely 9 a.m., the glass doors opened. Elena walked in. The sound of her heels clicked like thunder in a church. Heads turned. Catherine Harrison gasped. Robert froze. And Michael's phone slipped from his hand, clattering on the polished floor. "Good morning," she said, voice steady. "My name is Elena Martinez, founder of Nexus Systems and your new majority owner." Gasps rippled through the room. "I believe some of you knew me as Elena Harrison," she continued. "I've recently resumed my maiden name. But more importantly, I'm here to rebuild what carries your family's name." Michael's lips parted, words dying before birth. She smiled faintly, then turned to the projector displaying graphs of growth forecasts and modernization plans. This acquisition wasn't sentimental. It was strategic. Harrison and Sons has potential, but it needs new vision. Starting today, we're implementing Nexus software across every branch, increasing efficiency and sustainability. Jobs won't be lost. They'll multiply. Her voice softened just enough to slice. However, some roles require adjustment. Michael Harrison, head of sales, you're relieved of your duties, effective immediately. Your recent performance reports indicate consistent underachievement and misconduct. The room fell silent. Michael stood, face flushed. "You're doing this because I left you." "This is business," she replied coolly. "You failed long before you left me." Security escorted him out while cameras from corporate communications caught every second. Within hours, the footage would circulate across investor networks, sealing his humiliation. That night, Lagos glowed with city lights reflected in the lagoon. Elena stood on her balcony overlooking the skyline, the wind lifting her hair. She'd won, but the victory felt strangely quiet. Her phone vibrated again, news alerts about the acquisition, headlines screaming, "Hidden billionaire buys ex-husband's family empire." Her story had become gossip for boardrooms and dinner tables alike. She switched the phone off. From the horizon, lightning flickered like old memories, bright, brief, gone. For 3 years she'd hidden to test love. Now she was visible again, but the price of truth had been loneliness. Yet somewhere deep down, beneath the ache, she felt something new. Freedom. Freedom from proving her worth. Freedom from being small to make someone else comfortable. Freedom to rise. The headlines did not wait for permission. By midday, phones were buzzing across Lagos with the same notification. A clean photo of Elena in a navy blue suit, her hair pulled back, her eyes steady over a caption that burned through group chats like fuel. Hidden billionaire acquires Harrison and Sons, fires ex-husband on first day. The story had teeth. By evening, it had grown claws. Michael tried to outrun it. He left the factory compound in Sagamu with his jaw clenched and his tie loosened, the security officers shadowing him until he crossed the gate. The car he had borrowed from a friend refused to start on the first try, coughing like an old generator, then catching with a shudder. He sped toward Lagos as if the city would take his side. The sky was a hard, silvery blue. The road was a ribbon of heat. His thoughts were loud enough to drown out the radio. He told himself it was a stunt. He told himself it wasn't real. He told himself she was petty, that she had set him up, that no one could possibly believe she wasn't vindictive. But each time his phone lit up, reality crushed another excuse. Screenshots of his performance reports. A clip of him standing in the boardroom, stunned and red-faced, while Elena's voice, calm, cool, explained the restructuring. A single sentence captioned by a blogger with wicked humor, "Love cannot save sales targets." He switched the phone off. By the time he reached his parents' house in Acadia, GRA, the compound gate was already open as if the house itself was bracing for impact. Catherine stood in the front doorway, one hand on the jamb for balance, her face pale beneath careful makeup. Robert was behind her with his shoulders sagging under a weight he'd refused to name for years. "Please tell me this is a misunderstanding," Catherine said in a whisper. "Please tell me you didn't." "Michael, what happened?" He tried bravado first, the posture he knew. "What happened is that she humiliated me. She bought the company to punish me and—" "Stop," Robert said, the word like a hand in the air. "We both know the numbers. We both saw your reports. You have been failing, and I have been shielding you. That ends now." Michael blinked, stung as if slapped. "Dad." "Inside," Catherine said softly, "before the neighbors make a story of our porch." They gathered in the sitting room with the curtains drawn against the sun. The clock on the wall ticked too loudly. A generator hummed a steady bass line through the tiles. Catherine sat on the edge of the sofa with a tissue in her hand, shredding it without looking down. Robert took the single armchair like a judge. "Elena saved this company," he said. "We were weeks from crisis, real crisis. The kind where salaries are delayed, and men go home to tell their wives there is no food. Her capital saved us. Her systems will pull us forward. That she is your ex-wife is a twist of fate, yes. But it is not the point." "It is the point to me," Michael muttered. The words felt small the second they left him. Catherine lowered her eyes. "What happened to you? The boy who used to bring me his pocket money when I was short for soup ingredients. Where did he go?" She looked up at him then, her voice breaking. "Did you leave your wife because you loved another woman, or because you loved another world?" He had practiced with lies, but none of them could stand under that gaze. "I wanted more," he said. "I was tired of smallness. I thought—" He exhaled sharply and sat back. "I thought Elena had no ambition. And today you learned she has more than all of us combined," Robert said, not unkindly. "You wanted wealth to cover your emptiness. You thought money could be an elevator for a hollow heart." Michael swallowed. In another room, the fridge clicked on. Outside, a bird chattered. Ordinary sound sharpened into judgment. "What now?" Catherine asked no one in particular. Robert's eyes softened. "Now we face our house. We accept that we raised you without insisting on the muscles of character." He leaned forward with both hands on his knees. "You will apologize to Elena. Not because it will change anything, but because the man you could still become would do it." Michael laughed, a dry little sound. "She doesn't want my words." "Your words are not for her," Robert said. "They are for you." He stood, face lined, voice gentle. "And you do not live here unless you are willing to change. You'll get help.
Talk to someone.
Work with your hands if you must. Earn back your own respect." Catherine reached for her son's hand. He let her take it, and something in him gave way, a knot untied, a collapsed scaffolding. He had the sudden urge to sleep for a week, to wake up in a different story. He nodded barely. "Okay." "Good," Robert said. "Start there." Elena began somewhere else entirely. The day after the boardroom, She traded the skyscraper views of Victoria Island for the concrete sincerity of the Sagamu factory floor. She arrived before the shift bell and walked the length of the assembly line with a hard hat on her braids. Oil hung in the air like a second language. The floor gleamed with effort. Faces turned, alert and cautious, as familiarity chased rumor. She's the new owner. She's the one who, yes, but she also promised jobs. Did you see the plan? She paused by a workbench where a woman in blue overalls tightened bolts with quick, precise turns. Good morning, Elena said.
Elena.
What's your name? The woman blinked, surprised to be seen.
Titi, ma.
Thank you, Titi, Elena said and meant it. Your hands carry this place. They moved on. She met foremen who wore years like medals and boys who had just learned to stand within moving parts without losing focus. She listened more than she spoke. When she spoke, it was to ask questions that respected the craft. How long does this reset take? Where do delays cluster? Who knows the workaround when a delivery is late? The answers came in a mix of Yoruba and English, threaded with pride and humor. She recorded notes and small brave ideas. A staggered break schedule here, a predictive maintenance checklist there, a switch from paper to tablets that would terrify some and liberate others. By midday, the heat pressed like a palm against the neck. She called for cold water and fruit for the line workers and insisted on drinking with them in the same corner where a pedestal fan rattled. No official photos.
No staged smiles.
She preferred the true pictures that stayed unposted, the ones that lived in memory where gratitude matured into loyalty. In the operations office, she gathered the supervisors. The room smelled of ink and old paper. A single portrait of the factory's founding year hung crooked above a cracked leather couch. We're not here to replace your wisdom with software, she said. We're here to make your wisdom visible. Data is only a mirror. It should show you what you already feel in your bones. People are afraid, one supervisor admitted. They think new systems mean new sacking. Elena shook her head. We will train before we measure. We will learn before we correct. And we will promote from within. Fear is a tax we cannot afford. She smiled, a flash as brief as a blade. And please call me Elena. Ma is for my aunties when I'm in trouble. Laughter uncoiled. Shoulders dropped. Someone exhaled. She wrote dates on the whiteboard. Pilot week for the Nexus modules, machine downtime audits, supply chain syncs with Lagos distributors, community town hall to explain the changes. In every plan, she left margins for human breath. Systems failed when they forgot the pulse. She would not. On her way out, a man in grease-streaked coveralls stopped her with a hesitant half-bow. My wife prayed for you last night, he said shyly. She said, may God bless the woman that kept my job. Elena took his hand in both of hers. Tell her I said amen. By late afternoon, she met Robert in his office. He had aged another quiet year since yesterday, but there was relief under the fatigue, as if he had been waiting for permission to put down a stone he had carried too far. I don't have the words, he said simply. You don't owe me any, she replied. You owe this place the same honesty you asked of your son. He nodded and offered her the old swivel chair, the one she had watched him occupy with a different sort of power. She sat and looked out the window at the yard, where stacks of pallets threw long shadows like sundials. Do you want to stay on as operational CEO? She asked. I do, he said. If you will have me. I will, she said. But with conditions. He braced, and she managed a brief smile. Transparency, she said. We measure everything that matters, and we tell the truth about those measurements. 2. Apprenticeships for young women from the community. Too many factories look like men-only clubs. 3. Safety is not negotiable. The first time someone hides an incident to protect a metric, they're gone. 4. No more shielding your son from consequences. Not from me. Not from you. His eyes glistened. He did not look away. Agreed. Good, she said softly. Then we build. When he left, she took a long breath and let herself feel the tiredness crawl up her spine. Power was heavy when worn with integrity. It pinned you to the earth. She stood, rolled her shoulders, and forced herself to eat a small plate of jollof from the canteen, sweet tomato heat waking the mouth, reminding the body it had a right to fuel. Her phone vibrated with a message from her publicist. 3 networks want interviews. Spin is favorable. Do we accept?
Decline, she typed.
Issue a statement. Focus remains on workers and modernization. No comment on personal life. Another message, this time from an unknown number. You think you're better than us. Watch your back. She stared at it for a second, then flagged it and forwarded to security with a single annotation. Track. De-escalate first. If repeat, escalate. She had learned to sit with threats the way some people sat with mosquitoes. Swat only when necessary. Never pretend there aren't more. On 3rd Mainland Bridge, the lagoon carved light into the city as the sun bled down. Elena's driver took the slow lane while she reviewed the first week's implementation schedule. Her mind was a corridor lit with tasks. Grief and anger drifted in its corners like quiet ghosts that no longer mattered. In the back seat, she allowed one memory because it was honest, and because honesty had become her only luxury. 3 years of smallness had taught her the precise taste of loneliness, the metallic aftertaste of withheld truths, the chalky crumb of shrinking yourself to fit another person's comfort. She had not hid her money to play games. She had hid her fullness to learn whether someone could love her without being dazzled or intimidated. The answer had cost her a marriage and returned her a spine. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was an email from a secondary school in Abeokuta requesting a factory tour for their science club. She smiled and forwarded it to her assistant with a note. Yes. Also arrange scholarship briefing. 2 slots yearly for girls in STEM from this school. Start with this cohort. Traffic thickened as they entered the island. Street hawkers wove between lanes, plantain chips, bottled water, phone chargers. A child rapped knuckles on the window, held up a bag of groundnuts, and grinned with the cheerful resilience of Lagos. Elena lowered her glass and bought 2, taking the brief joy of the exchange like a blessing. Back at her penthouse, night laid a cool hand on the city. The elevator mirrored her back to herself, the same woman she had been at 26 with a laptop and a terrifying dream, the same woman at 35 with an empire's blueprint in her head. She removed her shoes at the door and walked barefoot across stone that sighed with the day's heat. The balcony opened to a wide sky pricked with plain lights. Somewhere below, music drifted from a restaurant, soft high-life chords that made memory sway. She answered emails until her eyes burned, then closed the laptop and stood in darkness with the city's heartbeat climbing to meet her. She let the quiet do its work, sanding down the edges, polishing the inside to a calm she could use in the morning. Her doorbell rang. She checked the screen. Catherine Harrison stood in the hallway, alone, a small figure holding dignity, like a shawl. Elena opened the door. For a moment the 2 women simply looked at each other. One who had been banished by rumor and resurrected by truth, the other who had believed and now wanted to unbelieve without erasing her son. Then Catherine stepped forward and took Elena's hands. I came to say thank you, Catherine said.
Her voice was raw.
Not for saving the company, though you did. For being kinder than we deserved. Elena shook her head. Kindness isn't a transaction. It's a decision you make for yourself. Catherine nodded, tears catching in her lashes.
I was wrong about you.
I thought you were the reason my son was unhappy.
It shows worry over curiosity.
Elena squeezed her fingers. We all choose shortcuts when fear is loud. Catherine inhaled. What do we do now? We work, Elena said simply. We build a place worthy of the people inside it. We refuse to let one man's choices rot an entire orchard. Catherine laughed through tears. You talk like my late mother. She used to say, one bad mango cannot define the tree. They sat on the sofa, and Catherine told stories of the early years when Robert drove home with grease on his face and hope in his chest, of how Michael used to fall asleep holding tiny machine parts like treasures, of the day the bank nearly took everything and how a stubborn prayer held the roof in place. Elena listened, not as a conqueror but as a witness, and felt the future thread itself quietly through the room. When Catherine stood to leave, she hesitated at the door. "He will come to you," she said softly. "My son. Not to ask for anything for once. To apologize. Please, receive the apology. Do with it whatever gives you peace." "I will listen," Elena said. "And I will choose what frees us both." When the door closed, the penthouse held its breath for a moment, then exhaled into stillness. Elena walked to the window again and touched the glass with her palm. Heat rose against it from the city below. She slept like someone who had moved a mountain a few inches in the right direction. 2 days later, the first training session began. The factory's old conference hall had been repainted in bright white, windows unsealed to invite air and light, tables rearranged in a horseshoe so faces could see faces. Tablets lay in neat piles, each labeled with a name and a department. On a large screen, her team projected the dashboard that would soon track the factory's pulse, demand forecasts, inventory turns, machine uptime, overtime patterns, numbers that could cut through rumor and reveal where to put hands and hope. Elena opened the session herself. "There is no shame in not knowing," she said. "Only in pretending. We will learn together. Ask your questions. If you think your question is stupid, it means you are brave enough to learn in public. That is the kind of courage that builds a company." Hands went up. A foreman asked whether the tablets would survive oil and dust. A young technician wanted to know if the new scheduling could respect the timing of afternoon prayers. An older man with a careful voice asked if the data would be used to punish, the way other factories did. "It will be used to improve," Elena said. "Punishment is a poor teacher. Consequences will exist, but they will come with paths to correction." In the afternoon, they ran simulations that turned nervous laughter into delighted noise. Men who had sworn they hated computers found themselves dragging sliders and predicting machine downtime with accuracy that made them grin. Women who had been quiet in meetings discovered their voices in small groups, pointing to patterns their hands had always known. At lunch, plantain and beans were served in reusable plates as part of the new sustainability program. Someone cracked a joke about rich people saving the world by banning sachet water. Everyone laughed, including Elena, and the laughter did what laughter always does in Nigeria. It welded strangers into a team for the length of the joke, and sometimes longer. Midway through the day, she stepped outside to breathe. The sun sat heavy. A breeze prowled the yard looking for relief it could not find. Her phone vibrated with a message from communications. "Town Hall RSVP count high. Prepare a short Q&A on layoffs again. Also, online comments are wild. Half of Lagos thinks you're an angel, the other half a witch. Congratulations." She typed back, "Let them argue. We'll let the payslips answer." She pocketed the phone, then paused and looked up at the water tower with the company name still painted in fading blue. For a second, the past and future overlaid, the old name bleeding into new resolve, and she felt the spine of the story align. Not revenge, not spectacle. Renewal. Reflection for you. If you were leading this turnaround, would you keep the company's old name to honor its history, or rename it to mark a new beginning? Drop your answer below. I'm reading every comment. By closing time, the factory wore a different mood. Cautious hope, the sort that stands on its own 2 feet and refuses to be tipped by rumor. Elena lingered as workers clocked out, greeting them by name where she could, promising to learn the ones she missed. The yard thinned. The sky unraveled into evening. Her driver opened the car door. That was when she saw him across the lot, waiting near the security post in a shirt that had known better days. Michael stood with his hands visible, as if approaching a skittish animal. No swagger, no claim. Just a man who had finally run out of costume. Elena lifted a hand to let the driver know she would walk. They met in the middle of the yard where the day's heat still floated like a low cloud. For a handful of heartbeats, neither of them spoke. The world around them sharpened to the sound of a flag rope tapping a pole, the distant chatter of 2 cleaners, the engine cough of a departing truck. "Thank you for seeing me," he said at last. "I haven't decided if I'm seeing you," she replied. "I'm standing here. That's different." He nodded, took the distinction like medicine and swallowed it. "I wanted to say I'm sorry," he said. Not because I want anything. There is nothing for me to want here. I needed to say it to the person I wronged. I chose smallness and called it ambition. I hurt you and called it reality. I left humility and called it growth. Elena watched him. The ego she knew was not with him. It had been left somewhere on the highway between pride and consequence. In its absence, he looked younger and older at once. Are you in therapy? She asked. He blinked, surprised. Yes, he said quietly. My parents asked me to. I said no. Then I looked in a mirror for the first time in years and said yes.
Good, she said.
Keep going. I will. He glanced at the building, at the workers walking past with tired, satisfied faces. You are good at this. I am, she said, and the simplicity of the truth felt like rain after harmattan. Will you? He stopped, shook his head.
No.
There's no ask. Only the apology.
I accept it, she said.
Not for you. For me. He nodded again, relief and grief sharing the space in his eyes. Then I'll go. Walk well, she said. It was the kind of farewell their parents' generation used. He smiled because he recognized it. She watched him leave without satisfaction and without pain. The story had turned a slow corner and begun a new road. She did not need him to suffer for her to breathe. When she slid into the back seat of her car, the city had already begun to light its evening candles. She pressed her head against the cool glass and let fatigue carry her. Tomorrow would be another day of heavy good work, and the day after that, and the day after that. She had traded a spectacle for a purpose. The math balanced. As the driver pulled onto the highway, Elena opened her notebook and wrote a single line for herself in ink that would not fade. Builds so well that forgiveness is simply the weather your house is designed to withstand.